Hello, everybody. It's my pleasure to introduce Chris Adams. Chris is an educator and social entrepreneur who teaches environmental leadership and co-directs the sustainability project at Dawson College. He's been recognized nationally and internationally for his environmental and sustainability programs. He's executive director of the Earthvalues Institute, which is a nonprofit charity specializing in using nature as mentor philosophy to teaching. And he's also the director of Cadameco Consultants Inc. Chris evaluates the success of projects through traditionally measured outcomes, as well as indicators of working group cohesion and successful group process. Most recently, he's committed himself to research and application of sustainable happiness, which is something that I would love to hear about, a concept pioneered by Dr. Catherine O-Brien. He's the founder of the Sustainable Happiness Certificate at Dawson College and is an active member of Sustainable Dawson. Chris is going to be speaking to us today about Dawson's living campus. And with that, sir, I'll hand the mic over to you.
Thank you. Thank you very much for that introduction and the invitation. If I could get permission to share my screen, I'll just get right into a PowerPoint.
You should have permission.
Okay. And do you see the full screen there?
We do.
Yes.
Okay, I'll just get to the full slideshow. Okay, yes, and I'm very proud to mention to a lot of neighbors of Dawson College that we had a stage student that just put in an application for Sustainability Institution of the Year in Europe that the UN endorses. And I'm ashamed to say we had 5 or 6 people in the room because we thought we would not have a chance to win against 56 universities from around the world with multi-million-dollar budgets. And we came out on top. We are now rated the #1 Institute of Higher Education and Sustainability right here in Westmount. So I think this presentation, I hope the pride that I feel does show through. It's a collective effort from all of our students and staff and the community that we're part of. But I hope to give you a little bit of an idea in the next 20 minutes to 30 minutes of why the judges picked a college, which is basically 1-year high school and beginning university in the rest of the world with a very limited budget. We could not compete with solar panel arrays for acres, for example. We did not have a multi-million-dollar budget, but because of our living campus philosophy of reconnecting people, community, and nature, and then integrating the disciplines secondly, and our core value at Dawson of well-being for all. Education should be about teaching how we take care of ourselves, how we take care of others, which makes us feel better, and how to take care of other species at the same time. So really teaching the whole person. So very quickly, obviously we're this little gem we call ourselves of a green space in close to downtown Montreal, in the old Mother House, a wonderful building. And we're the largest CEGEP in Quebec at about hovering around 10,000 students with about another 1,000 at night and 1,100 staff members. And we do call ourselves a living campus. The picture of the young girl you see here was a volunteer who took care of our bees on our rooftop that pollinate our gardens. She fell in love with bees and she now works full-time taking care of honeybees in different parts of the world. I'm not going to spend too much time on this because this is what we all grew up with. And certainly this generation, you've probably heard of eco-anxiety. It is a serious problem. Many of our students say they are suffering from eco-anxiety. They're turning off the news. They're overwhelmed with negative comments about their future. So we admit here that there's a problem, that we've all used the Earth's capital to enjoy reasonably good lives, certainly in the West. And I also threw in a picture of our history, which is so important on the left. This was during the shooting in 2006 that I also went through. I mean, I'm still here. Obviously, there were some life lost, Anastasia, and 16 people were shot. And we ask ourselves that day, September 13th, 2006, why do we teach? What's education all about? Why do these things happen? And it was at least in part of our story. We needed to heal as a community. We told ourselves it was not our fault. We're taking back our school. And when the Premier Charest at the time called and said, what can I do? Our Director General said, take back our school, come in here with forensics, repair our school. We want it back, no metal detectors. And that's gone around the world now. And studies have shown that during these traumatic events, you have to get back to normal. What was beautiful, and I learned, and I was humbled by our students, the day we opened, they collected on de Maisonneuve. They filled de Maisonneuve. In fact, the police had to come to shut down the street because they were all texting each other. And they said at 12:23, a shooter came in hate. We will not go back into our school until 12:23 today with love. What a message that was, using technology to get a message across. So we're using that now in a positive way. How do we get positive messages across? So we made a choice in 2006. Part of our healing would be to start a peace garden, because gardens celebrate diversity like our students. They celebrate life, their library of knowledge. Sometimes gardens need care, sometimes they want to be left alone. It was exactly the metaphor for us. And we started this garden and it spread, and we became a living campus, which is basically authentic learning where students can live the learning, problem solve, be creative, be innovative, but you're doing it. And if you fall off the bike with the problems, it doesn't work, we'll dust you off, we'll get you back and keep going. So it really isn't only about the environment, it's social justice issues, it's economics as well. And we made that choice. This is the slide I'd like to spend more time on. This is part of a living campus where, for example, in the upper left with the moth, this is Canada's largest moth. And we had a program design class in a recreation program. Their competencies, if you like, or objectives in the course was to plan, implement, and evaluate an event. So what we do is say, we're not going to give teachers extra work. Why don't you plan to attract the largest moth in Canada to downtown Montreal? What do we need to do that? And they start. They're not biology students, but they start. And they realize right away with Google, oh my God, it doesn't eat. It doesn't even have a stomach. Well, how does it live? How does it find a mate at night? What does the caterpillar eat? Are we allowed to plant it here in Westmount? We have to look at the bylaws. So whether it's a biology class or a methodology class, or in this case, a program design class, my job with my staff is to try to show teachers and students, it doesn't matter what discipline you're in, we're connected to the natural world and there's many answers out there. And it feels good to help other species. And by bringing down stress levels that students have, partly because of life and their age, partly because of post-COVID, just to give you an idea, 90% of Dawson students feel psychological issues are their biggest issue at the moment. It's a crisis. So we need to get them outside. We need to make sure we build community so they can build hope and resilience. And this is one way. We are designated a Monarch Oasis by the city of Montreal. We now have wild monarchs that actually lay eggs on our property. We planted over 300 milkweed plants, the only plant they lay their eggs on. And we planted many flowers for the adults to come and eat. We tag them with a little website so people who find our butterflies can actually look them up in Texas if they want, or in Mexico, and they know that they were let go in our garden. And we also teach students from south of us who may not be able to afford to go to camp. And now we have enough naturalized areas on our city block, meadows, we show decomposition with trees. In this case, it's our parking lot, and one of our teachers is teaching the children. All of this represents our living campus. And the young man you see painting the wolf, he's a graffiti artist that we work with in Mexico. We have an exchange there. And rather than identify students that might be on probation or might be in trouble for whatever reason for that, we identify them for what skills they have. This graffiti artist was an amazing painter. And we asked him to celebrate Canadian and Mexican biodiversity in whatever way he wanted. He made a 2-story head of a Canadian wolf looking at a Mexican wolf. It was just stunning. So that too is just making sure that it's not just us teaching the students. We have 10,000 little libraries of vacation time and culture coming into our building, and we need to find ways to tap into it in a truly living campus. So I'll go a little bit faster and give you an idea of the individual projects that define what we do. We are carbon neutral forever. In 2018, our board of directors said we're doing it. So what we do is we continue to reduce our natural gas consumption, electricity. We now compost over 1 ton per week. And all of this brings down what we used to bring to the landfill or the waste areas. And we've reduced our energy by 60%, our consumption. And we planted now, actually it says 30,000. I can now say we planted now 45,000 trees, and we calculate with students how much CO2 those trees absorb. And that makes us carbon neutral. So the CO2 we put into the atmosphere every year is calculated. And then the number of trees we need to take in that CO2 is also calculated. And that's what makes us carbon neutral. That in itself isn't enough. We do offset about 2,700 metric tons a year. We're very lucky because we're in Quebec and we use a lot of electricity. We're not using a lot of gas and oil. But where we plant the trees is in Nicaragua, on marginal land that's been used so much that they don't know really what to do with it anymore. It's not producing food. And a graduate of Dawson went on a north-south program, one of the classes, fell in love with the families, continued to see them, and ultimately went through school, PhD in forestry, specifically on what trees to plant to recondition that land and create a forest again. So our trees that make us carbon neutral are planted with these families. And what's beautiful is we get to see photos of the families that actually make us carbon neutral. There's a human connection to this, which is wonderful. And we now buy products. The forests are old enough that they're now thinning them so the remaining trees grow. And we've taken people that were making $2 Canadian a day and making sure now they have enough to send their kids to school, clothe them, and have enough food. So that's what we mean by a truly social enterprise in sustainability, that we're now rebranding as well-being for all. We take care, the birds you hear at your country place have a place to go when they fly south because we leave the canopy there. Now they're introducing shade coffee, and we'll try to support them with that as well. So the students are involved in all of this. And again, part of our living campus philosophy, reconnecting people. It's not just we're carbon neutral because we have money to buy carbon credits. We want to make sure that the human connection remains, and that's so important. And part of the bidding process is the company has to tell us how our students and teachers will benefit from them. And they actually have satellite data that the farmers use on their phones. And our students can tap into that and learn in different classrooms. That's what won them the bid. So at Dawson now, we don't have to go with the lowest bid, which the government tends to say, always the lowest bid. We are allowed to go with a bid that's higher if it meets sustainability or well-being for all objectives. And I think that's really quite important. And I must give credit to our board of directors for being that bold. This is just a diagram to show that whether it's a large sector like a union or our First People Center, our facilities department, which of course is very large, or an individual student project, where it's very difficult, but we're trying to show people any project that you do, large scale or small scale, contributes to well-being for all. And one of our biggest challenges is to communicate so many good things that happen in a large building like this. As an example, I often tell administration here, Dawson with only 10,000 people is larger in population than the average small town in Canada. It's really hard to know what everyone is doing, all the good things. So that's one of our challenges as well. Communication and public relations is really important. And through our work and the examples I just give you, we want to make sure that a student doesn't feel they're leaving their school, leaving their community and coming to a school, that they're coming to another community. This is part of their community. And with that, we get into friendships are important as well as socializing, athletics, not just the academics. I think that's a mistake, certainly for the SAGEPs and why they were actually founded in the first place. We want systems and disciplines to come together, particularly feeling and knowing. This office spends a lot of time on that. We need time to let people feel. We will protect what we love. And if it's always intellectual material, in fact, I'm in education because I want to try to change it. I love education, but I would be lying if I said I'm here because I want the status quo. I think if you look in the rearview mirror, institutes of higher education do good work, but they need to look at the greater purpose of making sure we graduate whole students that feel good about who they are and know that part of civic duty is contributing to your community. We are working with the 17 UN goals. We're cataloging all of our courses to see which of these UN goals are touched upon. And I'll give you a quick example of where I spend time again in this office in a practical way. I mentioned the Monarch Butterfly Project. So that goal number 13 is about climate action. We're now identifying our courses that you see on the left that deal exactly with that. But more importantly, we just threw away all of our garbage cans. We made an executive decision that garbage cans every 50 feet are a real sign of the past, and they were all taken away, including offices, not without some dismay. And we have sorting stations, one per hallway. So you're forced to get up with your own garbage. So people are saying, I don't want to take, it's not my job to take the garbage out. And my reaction is, well, whose job is it? The person who wants to leave here is working all night. They have 2 children just like you. And I'm using a real example, the lady in my hallway who I got to know. And she said, I really like working at Dawson. And when I asked her why, the response was rather shocking. She said, here people say hello to me. Simple as that. Cleaning our toilets, making sure I have a clean floor to walk on every day. And I come back and my garbage can is empty every day. So it didn't take long. And we told people, well, research shows that getting up several times a day, if not every hour, is very important for your health. You're going to watch what you have to do with your garbage. And we gave everybody a 1-liter container, small container. And it's on it, it says, this is all the garbage I make. And they have to go there and sort. And invariably, they bump into people. And we say, hey, how was the weekend? How are the kids? Which makes a huge difference when you're going to HR with a problem, or you're going to facilities for a problem. So we tried to even put some of these sorting stations in high stress areas because we know people socialize when they bump into each other. So these are what we call micro restorative areas inside the building. It's not just about nature, but we want to create mini activities where people actually have to get a drink of water at the fountain, and then they come here and sort, and they're in a different mood when they walk back to their office, even though they've only been there for 2 minutes. That's done with intent, And that, sorting brings down our greenhouse gas emissions as well. And then for our foundation, we also ask, where do we invest our money? It would be hypocritical of a student to walk out of a 3-hour class talking about socially responsible investment and then have our foundation say, boy, we made 50% return this year because we invested in a company that took advantage of others or greatly influenced negatively their future in terms of the planet. So all of these are connected, and we try to do that as well. All part of our living campus and why we've been recognized. This is very pedagogical, can you tell? Right? It's cold, no colors, no people smiling. Not too many narratives I can give you for this. It's important for a teacher. I mean, again, I'm here because I love education, but I purposely used this slide for educators saying, take high impact practices where people are bumping into each other. Can you use sustainability as a theme to meet your competencies, regardless of what you teach, English, French, calculus? And are people being more creative? Is there teamwork involved? That's what we call graduate profile outcomes. An important slide, but I'm not going to spend time on it because if we spend too much time on it, well, I'm trying to think of myself as a student. I shouldn't say you. Too much of this, gets tiring. It's intellectual. This everybody can relate to. Those are happy people. And I don't mean happy in the populist sense, happiness as a function of well-being. Annie, the student at the very top, single-handedly started composting when people said, c'est pas propre, fruit flies, we shouldn't be composting here. People will bring their compost from home. That's not fair. It's not our job. She said, I will personally empty every day the first 35 bins to see how it works. And she did. In fact, she delayed her university by a semester to volunteer. And I just gave a lecture this morning before this presentation saying, if you care about your neighbor, if you care about your community, if you have time, put in time. If you have money, put in money. We're all at different points in life. But if we all give back just 5%, what a different world we would have. And Annie showed that. Beside her, the beard with the beard and the hat was a biology teacher who said, what is this? And we said, what's an insect hotel? The social science teacher on the right in pink said, that's an insect hotel. Isn't it cool? Little holes for insects to go in. By the way, we have 4 wasps, different bees and wasps, solitary insects that nest in there now. They need little holes in dead trees to put their nest in, but they don't make the holes. But we cut all the dead trees down. So they're running out of places, and they actually pollinate better than bees do. He's in biology, and he whispers in my ear, you know, I have a lab where I teach students to kill insects, and they have to identify the insects to 5 orders. And when they identify the 5 orders, they pass. He said, never have I thought of teaching my students to give back to the insects that they're learning about. So now he has a lab where he teaches them how to catch the insects alive. They identify 5 to order, and he shows them the insect hotel. And that's part of our living campus. Again, change in thinking completely. I'll just check my timing here quickly. I think I'm okay. Yeah, I'll hurry up a bit.
You're fine.
Okay. I have permission to use Dalton's name, wonderful student. And Dalton is sat in the back of the room like I did when I was in school, and he'd look out the window a lot. And one day I asked Dalton, what are you thinking about, Dalton? Rather than saying, turn around, pay attention, you're always looking out of the window. But I was really intrigued. He was obviously thinking. And he said, well, sir, I like rap. I was just going over some rap. So I said, oh, so you're a poet? He said, yeah, I guess you could say that. So I said, Dalton, I'll make you a deal. He was worried about his final exam. And I said, if you could write a rap and present it to the class on what climate change is, what are the causes, and most importantly in your rap, what do we need to do about it? I'll consider that for your part of your exam. Well, he was just amazed. He sat on that stump for about 2.5 hours. When he sang his rap that night, the cell phones came out. And just like I learned with the shooting, they all put it on social media. They all gave him a clap. They were just standing up, 100 people clapping. And it went on social media. He was validated for his knowledge in my class. And I don't mind saying Dalton, who was staring out a window, not paying attention to me, the teacher, taught more people about climate change that day than I ever could have. And I learned a lot again about taking from students rather than always thinking we have to give to them. He was invited to Mexico, where he sang his rap in a small town. And during the rap, a 16-year-old came up to me and said, can I join him? He didn't know English, but he started to rap in Spanish. So you had these 2 people rapping the cell phones out in another country. And then he was asked to sing on Mexican radio station. All of that because of one question, which I consider part of a living campus philosophy. Let's take more from the people that are coming in and show them how we can use what we want to teach with their hobbies, their interests, and that's really quite important. So we use positive psychology. People want to be in classes where they can share positive emotions, and they want to be engaged, and they want to have positive relationships. So that's our #1 rule in our sustainability office. Then we look at climate action, water conservation. It's how we do it that's so important. And these judges recognize that in Europe. Again, I won't go into this, but we do have attributes, and we share this with anybody. And there are universities and colleges now looking at our living campus attributes and looking at their strategic plans. And I'm very proud of that as well. So we invited ministers from churches, we had teachers from university, elementary school, all for 2 years. We had feedback about what they thought a true living campus should have in it. So we broke all of their feedback down into these vision and values, leadership, teaching, learning, nature and community, health and well-being. And then again, we're still learning how to put all of this into practice, but here are some other quick examples. This is on our gym roof. We renaturalized the gym roof, and we've had 2 migratory species of birds nest on our roof now. That's an evaluation of our institution that we're doing something right. That bird felt peace. It had food, it had nesting material, it felt safe. We had a duck nest on our roof 5 times. That in itself caused some issues. But our students are here to problem solve. One of the problems 2 students had, it was part of an action research project. They had to be mini engineers. We wanted to have a 100-year-old oak tree that had to come down on our property. And we wanted to give it the dignity of decomposing on our property, not just chip it up and take it away. And they said, well, what if we left one on the property and we put one on the roof? Just we take away predators like skunks and raccoons from visiting it, and then biology students could compare the life in these logs. And I thought, great idea. So knock yourself out. There's your project. Plan it, implement it, and it was risk management. How do you get someone, they wanted the log cut in half so we could open it. Okay, how do we do that? How do we move the log that probably weighed over 500 pounds up onto the roof? So they have to look at all the elevators, and they realize there's freight elevators at Dawson that they never discovered. What's the weight load with you in it? And then they figured out they could take it in, but then they didn't measure it. They brought it in the building and they weren't sure it would fit in. So very practical. Well, back up. And they did figure it out. They did get it there. And we put a lock on it. The lock was just being installed in the middle there. You see the indentation. And just for public relations reasons, we said it's only opened up at 1 o'clock on Fridays. And that was just part of, this is a special log. Nobody can just come and open it up and disturb what's inside. So at 1 o'clock, it was always opened up with the two handles, and the students would quickly write down all the insects they would see inside it. And as it decomposed, for example, they found a 400% increase in insect life within 1 month. It got so popular, we had to put a webcam because teachers wanted to see what was in there, and we couldn't all get around it on the roof. And just a wonderful example of how we learned with the students. We also have a little pond in the lower left corner. The students went to Westmount and said, are we allowed making a pond on the property? And the answer was no, the bylaws over an inch, you need a 4-foot fence, has to be an iron fence. So they said, can we make a pond on the roof? And it was a wonderful, you see this big binder of bylaws and they're going through it. The answer was, well, no one's really asked me about that before. And I said, thank you. Until you have the answer, we're putting a pond on the roof. So we have a pond on our gym roof, which is really quite amazing. We also have a 2-story living wall. There are 400 plants in this wall. And this is a room particularly designed for teachers to come and be creative. It's meant to reduce stress. Furniture is round. The lights are round, like in nature. You don't have square things. Very calming. And we know that in under a minute, research is showing, even having house plants, or when you view a tree from a window, you will have more access to memory. You will be more imaginative, more creative. And many companies are giving key people, designers, for example, architects, offices with windows. And if there's a body of water, by the way, that you can see, that's where creativity and imagination is at its peak. So we're now saying, well, when we put 400 students in a gym for an exam, it's not really reducing stress. So this year, for the first year, students, we're going to have a little plant on the desk with here, this is who I am. You can take care, you can take me home, you can take care of me. John Abbott piloted this, and apparently the reaction was great. Just having students smile before an exam lowers the tension and might give you that extra idea when you're working on a math problem. So we're using that research very carefully. And sustainable happiness, as was mentioned, is our big program right now. We have a 200-person waiting list, including 100 people from the Faculty of Medicine and Health at McGill. And sustainable happiness isn't about sustaining happiness, as you might think from the title. It's a way for us to teach about sustainability through individual happiness. So for example, when we ask people, what makes you happy? So it becomes personal, really important. One of the common comments we get here is, I love my 10 o'clock break. I have a coffee, I'm with friends, I'm away from the stress of the job. Okay. We'll talk about the stress of the job later. But then I will say, where's the coffee come from? Are we paying somebody $2 a day in Nicaragua that we know to pick your coffee? Or are you ensuring with intent that the coffee you're having during a break that makes you happy will make, you can augment their happiness too? So maybe it should be fair trade coffee. And if it's shade coffee, the birds you hear at your country place, the example I gave you earlier, have a place to go. So you can keep your happiness, augment the happiness of someone else, and help the planet. That's sustainable happiness. And then we escalate the thinking. What about your vacation? Vacations make you happy at the expense of other people or the planet. And we take them through 20 hours of a certificate. And to get the actual certificate from Dawson, you have to do a project where you show us, you take one element of what you've learned about gratitude, genuine wealth, media literacy, ecological footprint, and you do an activity that shows that you're community benefits. Could be a 4-hour activity. Some people write chapters in a book. The plants in the gym was a sustainable happiness completion project, and then they get their certificate. So the idea here is 2-hour theory bursts a week, and we allow your managers let you off of work. You shouldn't take your lunchtime to take this. It should be part of well-being in an institution. So we now are at a point where our HR department, with the manager's permission, will let staff take 2 hours of paid time to take sustainable happiness, and then they all contribute to their community at the end. And each week they're going back to the workplace less stressed, which means they're more productive. So this is catching on, and we're actually we have a proposal with the Ministry of Health, Mental Health at the federal level. We're looking to start a national sustainable happiness training center right here in Montreal, so we can export this to many institutions that are asking for it. Just a couple of slides left. There's our wonderful Peace Garden, and anyone here, you're welcome to visit us, and we could actually give you a tour of our living campus, as we are with the women's group today. And so many stories. 1,500 volunteers have helped us with this garden. It started off as a small idea, and the students again said after the shooting, did anybody tell us how big this garden should be? And there's the answer: an entire, corner of our city block between Wood and Sherbrooke. Every rock you'll notice is similar, square. A beautiful story I'd like to mention is when the contractor said, well, what kind of rocks do you need? I said, well, it'd be nice. His name was Jose. I said, Jose, if they could be like, half a ton to a ton, so people can't really move them. But if they could be flat so people can sit on them easily, that would be great. When I saw the truck come and emptied all of these blocks, I went up to Jose and I said, how did you do this? I mean, this is exactly what we wanted. And part of the Living Campus story is that these narratives. He said, I've never gone to the quarry in all my life where I order these rocks, but this project is special. Post-shooting, he said, I handpicked every one of them for you. Wow. So when I walk through the Peace Garden, I have so many stories like that. We didn't have enough money. A class decided to raise $100,000. They went from bake sales to let's just try. And because it was the little engine that could, they had a great idea. Let's just tell the media we're trying to raise $100,000 in one day. They'll never believe it. But once the media says, well, when are you going to do that? We'll call companies and say, you're going to look really good when the media is here if you support us. And I thought, genius. This wasn't a fundraising, professional. And they raised $49,000 that day. And then another class was so impressed, they said, we're continuing. And 2 classes of 30 kids raised $101,000 to start this project. So where there's a will, there's a way. And they were invited to the UN because this went international. And they met Jane Goodall, they met Stevie Wonder. It was just phenomenal, phenomenal. And the last slide perhaps just wraps it up the most. This is something we believe in. We don't have to have the answers, but we know that any challenge, if an institute of higher education under our roof with all these wonderful teachers and students cannot solve the problems, I don't know who can. So we just believe in our institution. We set high goals, and then we'll find a way to get there. We don't always have to make it the straight line that we like, but it's an exciting place to be. And that's the presentation. And that's a snippet of our Living Campus philosophy.
That's amazing stuff, Chris. Really. I have a ton of questions, but I'm going to open it up. Anybody else want to beat me to the punch? Okay, sissies.
I have a question. You didn't recently. There was the sort of picnic table area between Dawson and Alexis Neon. It was installed. I think it's all by the city of Westmount. I don't know if there's plans of changing, expanding that, or doing like putting the Bixie stand into it, or what sort of thoughts do you have on that?
Yeah, we were in contact with the Westmount group. First of all, we love what's happened. It opens up this whole space with that many people. Of course, we have a metro tunnel, but you can tell students all you want. When you go down and take the metro tunnel, it's safer. So there's an issue with traffic there as well, particularly the bikes. I would say the bikes at the moment are more dangerous than the traffic. They're going fast and they don't stop. And we've had some collisions. So on a personal level, I would love the idea of doing a pilot of closing that area down. I think it would be high use. I know some businesses would be concerned. I think it would increase businesses, the ones that are very local, the restaurants. The issue is the way that block, as you know, is designed. It's the entrance, one entrance to Alexis Neon parking, and it's our entrance as well. So the key there, I think, would be what to do with those entrances. Perhaps if you don't live on wood, you'd say, okay, put it on wood. But if you live on wood, that's an issue. But I think the pilot itself is going really well. The tables are being used. It's just fantastic to see people socializing out there. People from the work at Alexis Neon coming into our garden, and our staff and students going out onto de Maisonneuve. I think retiring streets in general is a way of the future to, when I say the greater purpose of education, the greater purpose of cities as well, to make them more livable. And as far as Bixby, where we talked about Bixby yesterday, we need more here. There's 10,000 students and we have two stands of 20-ish bikes.
It seems ridiculous now that they have the picnic area that they don't have where they formerly had the Bixby stand isn't being used.
That's right.
Crazy.
That's right. So we are working on that actively. Yes.
Where can we see the wolves?
Well, that's in Mexico, about 20 minutes south of Cuernavaca, the capital of Morelos. What I could do, I'll make a mental note though. I could try to find a photo of the entire. I mean, this young man did. He got a team together. Behind each wolf is the biodiversity of each country, for about 50 to 60 feet. It's a coat building, and he took the whole wall. It's stunning. I'll make a note. If I can find it, I'd love to send it. Perhaps I could send it to Jim and if you want to show that another time, that'd be great.
It's interesting, Chris. About 10 months ago, we had Jessica Burpee, who is the daughter of Tom Burpee, who's here with us today. And she came to talk to us about the greening of John Abbott.
Yeah.
And do the CJEPs tend to work together on these things, or are they kind of separate?
No, I'm working with John Abbott. In fact, I will be meeting with them tomorrow. I meet with them regularly. So one of the things we want to do is share best practices, and that's exactly what we're doing. John Abbott is going through a rating system right now. So I'm going through all their indicators, and the plant example I gave you in the gym was at John Abbott. That was another project that a student and staff did there. We're borrowing that idea and bringing it over here. So it's a good point you make. I think one of the things we're guilty of, we're so busy. We need to network, and I think it's a good use of public money, that not every college should be using the same amount of money to brainstorm, develop, evaluate projects. We should be really dovetailing that type of energy and expertise. So we are doing that.
Okay. Your comment about the milkweed struck me because here in the Newfoundland Village, I noticed that the city of Montreal has actually planted milkweed in some of its planters.
Yes.
I've seen a big change in the last year and a half. Wildflowers being planted in new planters, but to actually see milkweed, which is not the most beautiful thing in the world, but to see it, and it was starting to burst open recently. So it obviously this whole idea is starting to catch on at a municipal level.
Yeah, I agree. And I think the nice thing is, and I mentioned to the non-biology or science students, if we can just focus on one insect, one bird, in this case, one plant, we don't necessarily have to know all the other living things that are associated with it. But, a milkweed, goldenrod, which is so common here, the New England asters that are blooming now, the wild plants, each of them could have 100 different species associated with them. And I think you just never know what happens when you introduce one native plant and you start seeing what happens. It's not just about the butterfly, it's butterflies, the ladybugs that come. And that type of life triggers all these conversations, particularly with children. Happy children means happier parent. And I connect all of that to stress in general of our life. We need these micro restorative moments that have disappeared. And you don't have, when people say, well, Chris, I don't really like nature. That's not what I'm talking about. Nature influences all of us, right? If you put a artificial window on your wall and you don't have windows at Dawson, that will trick your brain into thinking that it's open, and it actually will reduce, calm you down, right? Reduce stress. So we're using all of these techniques now in our classrooms as well. We're slowly introducing what's called biophilic design, that nature will have that calming effect on us.
Susan, you've got a question.
Yes, thank you so much, Chris, for coming to speak with us today. I believe that Dawson gives tours, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, okay, so that's something that we could maybe participate in at some point?
For sure. We have several tours, I think 2 going on today. We do them internal and external. So they last about an hour to an hour and 15 minutes. And you just book that with me or send an email to me, and I'll introduce you to Jen DeVera, who's our program developer. And we take you on the rooftops. You see the bees. We've got frogs on the roof. We've got our beautiful peace garden. You get to see some of the experiments that students started 10, 15 years ago and the results of them now, this whole notion of deferred gratitude when they come back and visit and see the results of their work. So we've had great success with the tour.
Okay. And second question is, we have an environment committee. And I am wondering, you may have to go away and give this a think, but if there are any projects that we can jump in on and participate with you or partner with you.
Oh my, you'll have a choice. You'll have a choice. That's an easy answer. I would love to have you involved, you know, side by side with some students learning. You have so much to offer in terms of what they can learn. And that's exactly what we want to build these connections, these networks and community that, you know, we tie into resilience and hope. And our students need that. They just need to know that there's always hope. And just put, you know, one foot forward, and you never know what's going to happen. And I think, you know, I'm looking at you through the screen. Not one day I hope to meet you in person, but absolutely, I think that's a role we all have, just to mentor that. We all go through stuff, and there's always hope down the road.
There is. And if you ever just want to send me a quick email on any options you have, Gulson is the chair of our environment committee, and so she'll jump in on that too. But by all means, please send that our way.
Okay. And do you have any preferences like gardening or actually I can probably put maybe 3, 4, 5 different types of projects together. And
that
then
would
you
be
can
great.
Help me decide. Okay.
As an example, Chris, we've Malcolm here is very involved with the Falaise Saint-Jacques, the cleanup of it and the reconstruction of it. And so we've had groups of anywhere from 5 to 10 Rotarians go out there to help with the cleanup and that kind of thing. So that's anything like that we can get involved in, we would love to.
Okay.
Yeah, we've been doing cleanups, and we've been doing a lot of getting rid of invasive species, planting milkweed and you know, native stuff as well. So
That's great.
Yeah.
Okay.
And
We're about to start our major landscape. Oh, sorry, go ahead.
And feeding the birds.
Yeah, so we have a whole, like a dozen bird feeders all along the Falaise.
Oh, that's really nice. Okay. We just it's not even public yet at Dawson, but I do know we are starting a 3-year major landscape plan. So we're just going to open it up and say what's the responsibility of the city block to the community and to our community of students. We're trying to bring down the entire temperature of the city block by 0.8 degrees, which doesn't sound like a lot, but it's, you know, it's half of the 1.5. Just to give you an idea, we have our first heat map. We have all our data. The pavement several times this year was 59 degrees, and then literally 1 meter away in the shade of a tree, it's 20, 22, 23 degrees less. So we're looking at a whole map of our area. We'll be doing some planting there. So I'd love to have Rotary involved in our whole landscape plan and make it a community effort.
Wonderful.
You wouldn't happen to have any mushroom? We're right at the very immediate need we have is someone who knows mushrooms, because we're doing a mushroom inventory and we're keeping a lot of the trees that have to be cut, and we're creating what we call not a dead tree garden, but a nurse tree garden. because these nurse logs give so much life afterwards. And we just created our first one, and there's mushrooms popping up. The students are so excited taking pictures, but we don't really have an amateur or professional around. So if there's anyone there that knows their mushrooms, we could use you.
I don't know. I know there's all kinds of mushrooms that's brought up in the dead trees and the fillets, but I'm Emma at Concordia. She's a biologist, and she comes and does surveys of the plants there.
Yes,
She would know.
Yeah, I should reach out to her. And the other thing I'd like to mention to you, we're just setting up an iNaturalist system. It's now set up so that the entire Dawson block is on the software, and we're going to be announcing that we want to attract 1,000 or identify and attract 1,000 species on this city block. And we have 400 already. I mean, it's a big challenge. The last 300 will be a lot tougher than where we have to go now. But that might be interesting too. The app is free. And if the club had a walk and all you did is come into our wonderful gardens when we're all in classes and you start taking pictures with phones, iNaturalist identifies it and uploads it immediately onto our site, onto our bank, and catalogs it. And when that's ready, I'd love to let you know. So if anyone comes with their family or children, you just help us create our inventory. And we're being pleasantly surprised by what we're finding. Some really nice things.
Well, Chris, I tell you, there's some pretty amazing things going on there that I certainly didn't know about. We keep hearing about the greening of this and how kids are getting involved, and but to see an institution of that size committing in this way is just gives you all kinds of hope for the future. It's a marvelous thing that you're doing there, and I thank you very much for educating us today. And I got a feeling that we're going to be seeing more of each other in the future. Absolutely.
That would be a pleasure to invite you here, both on a tour. And I'm convinced once you go on the tour, you'll get a much better idea of the types of things that we're actively doing that you can get involved with as well.
Well, thank you ever so much. We're going to continue the rest of our meeting. You don't need to stay for it. We won't be upset at all if you feel that to check out and get some lunch.